An arduous, terrifying journey to safety and inevitable bureaucracy, which now includes the possibility of being sent to Rwanda.
We are absolutely delighted and excited about our partnership with Rwanda.
The government's plan to send asylum seekers coming to the UK illegally to the East African country has a short but checkered history. Last month, the Home Secretary seemed jubilant in Kigali with young construction graduates set to build houses for deported migrants. And today, the High Court's recent ruling of the plan as lawful was decried by lawyers in the Court of Appeal. Judges showed excessive deference, they said, to the Home Office's view towards promises by the Rwandan government that asylum seekers there would be protected from ill treatment, adding there were serious evidential gaps and deficiencies that the judges at the High Court hadn't properly examined. Representing the Home Office, another lawyer said the Rwandan government has indicated a clear willingness to cooperate with international monitoring mechanisms. Away from the legalese, in straightforward terms, an asylum seeker who arrived in the UK in November told us how he feels about the government's plans.
I came to the UK facing such difficulties and have continued to face difficulties since coming here. We fled because of the Taliban takeover. My family worked with the British Army for years. This means immediate danger. We just want to live in peace, but since hearing the news about Rwanda deportations, we felt the opposite. I can't even describe in words how I'm feeling. It's awful.
Now, on to the illegal migration bill. That's up for discussion on Wednesday in the Commons. Today, in a really unusual intervention, the Equality and Human Rights Commission said the UK risks breaching its international obligations to protect human rights. What about the victims of trafficking and modern slavery, it asks? And how might women, children and disabled people be impacted?
There have been submissions this morning, very powerful, if I may say so, about a huge danger that once sent to Rwanda, they would face a risk of being refooled, in other words, sent away from Rwanda, potentially back to the country that they have fled from.
Downing Street has insisted the government continues to act within internal obligations regarding the bill, adding that it can't have a system that's unfair to thousands of people arriving through safe and legal routes. The court was told that under the proposed plans, asylum seekers are given 7 days to make representations, with 5 working days between the decision to remove them and the removal. The speed of this process, many argue, is out of sync with the vulnerability of those engaging with it.
Well, the Equality and Human Rights watchdog has warned that the government's plans to stop people crossing the channel in small boats may breach the UK's legal obligations. The EHRC said the illegal migration bill, including plans to send asylum seekers to Rwanda, could also end up exposing people to serious harm. Earlier, I spoke to Martial Bou from the EHRC and began by asking about his concerns.
We think that human rights are universal. In fact, that's what we've signed up to in the Declaration of Human Rights, that the bill does risk separating out one group over another and does potentially provide risks to some people, such as children, pregnant women, and others. And that's why we've provided a briefing for MPs. It's clearly for them to debate these issues in Parliament.
Some Conservative MPs, faced with your concerns, might say, well, that's exactly why they've been arguing that the government should take the UK out of the convention. In a way, you're sort of pushing them further down that road.
Well, it's obviously completely legitimate for any government to take forward its policy goals, and that will include in respect of immigration policy.
But if they adopted your concerns, the government, the Home Secretary would say, well, they couldn't take forward their goals if they looked at the letter of what you're saying.
Well, we believe that there are ways in which the government can take forward its legitimate policy goals without stopping the universality of human rights, which we think is really, really important, or potentially prejudicing some groups over others. We've asked the government to make sure that there are safe, regular routes for all refugees coming into this country, and they've said that they would bring those forward.
Have your fears been slightly allayed on the Rwanda policy, given that the High Court ruled that that policy was lawful?
Well, we have spoken at length with officials of the Home Office in respect of their immigration policies. In fact, a number of years ago, we put in place a legal agreement with them regarding the Windrush so-called hostile environment immigration policies, and they're taking action on the back of our recommendations. And we're talking to them about the Rwanda policy too. So in all of these matters, the Equality and Human Rights Commission is trying to fulfil our statutory duties, working with government and Parliament to make sure that human rights standards are upheld.
Is it ever acceptable to detain children? Because there have been some amendments in the last couple of days on this very point that make clear that the government envisages that this would only happen in very specific circumstances. Is any circumstance acceptable to detain children, for example, where they suspect that someone isn't actually under 18 when they're claiming to be?
Well, these are difficult operational issues, but one of the things that we've committed to in the Convention of the Rights of the Child, which is an international treaty, is to think about the best interests of the child or young person. And that's what we're reminding parliamentarians that they must do, that we must do as a country, so that when these difficult decisions are taken, difficult policies are enacted, and there's no doubt that there are issues to be addressed.
So if the bill as it stands passes, I mean, there are amendments down, but if it passes as it stands, your worst fears are come to pass, as it were. What kind of sanctions might the government face?
If there are risks of breaches of human rights standards or treaties that we've signed up to, then there is the possibility that one group or another will take legal action. But let's not get ahead of ourselves, because this is a matter for Parliament, rightly. And the government's put forward its proposals, and amendments will be debated. And the briefing that we provided for MPs today is part of that process, so that our democratic representatives can debate these issues and make sure that, as a country, we can take forward legitimate policy goals, but we don't breach human rights standards in the process.